The Persian Empire, one of the largest and most powerful empires in ancient history, is often remembered for its military might, opulent palaces, and vast cultural contributions. However, hidden beneath its grandeur lies a darker side, one that is often overshadowed by tales of conquest and diplomacy. It is a legacy forged not only through battles and treaties but also through methods of punishment so horrific, so designed for terror, that they still send shivers down the spine even today. These punishments were not meant to deliver justice. Rather, they served as a tool of fear and control, allowing the Persian rulers to maintain their dominance over vast territories. This article delves into the most terrifying methods of punishment used in the Persian Empire, where cruelty was weaponized and designed to leave lasting scars, both physical and psychological. Confined in a hollow log with milk and honey, the horror of Scaphism. One of the most gruesome methods of execution that emerged from the Persian Empire was Scaphism. This punishment, described in chilling detail by the Greek historian Plutarch, is often considered one of the most horrifying forms of torture in history. The victim, typically accused of treason or grave offenses against the state, was confined between two wooden boats, their limbs exposed, leaving them completely immobile. The real nightmare began when the victim was forced to consume a mixture of milk and honey, substances that were deliberately chosen to attract insects. Not only was the victim smeared with the same concoction, but the insects that followed, feasting on their exposed skin, would slowly begin their assault. The victim's body, once a vessel of life, was now a place of suffering. The person would slowly decompose under the unbearable heat of the sun, and the constant attack of insects would bring them closer to death each day. This method, known as Scaphism, could last days, sometimes weeks, while the victim languished in unimaginable suffering. The slow degradation of the body, combined with dehydration and exposure, meant that the person was forced to die in full view of the natural world, a true spectacle of torment. While some question the prevalence of Scaphism, the fact that it was recorded by ancient historians and passed down through centuries indicates its deeply ingrained place in Persian imperial justice. It was not just a form of punishment, it was a symbol of the absolute control the Persian Empire exerted over its subjects. Traitors faced a fate sealed in ashes, death by suffocation. Betrayal was viewed as one of the gravest crimes in the Persian Empire. The punishment for treason was designed to be so thorough, so absolute, that it would leave no trace of the traitor's legacy. According to Plutarch's Life of Artaxerxes, the Persian king used suffocation as a means of execution specifically for traitors. The victim was sealed in a room filled with hot ash, where they would die a slow, agonizing death. As the air thickened with ash, each breath the traitor took would bring them closer to death. The suffocation was compounded by the unbearable heat, causing the body to sweat, panic, and eventually succumb to the loss of breath. The execution method wasn't just physical, it was symbolic, a way to erase the traitor both from life and from history. By suffocating them in ash, the Persian Empire not only sealed the breath of the traitor, but also sealed their name, ensuring that they would be forgotten in silence and ashes. Stealing hands faced the edge of justice. The brutality of amputation. In the Persian Empire, stealing was considered not only a crime but an attack on the very structure that held society together. Theft threatened the stability of the empire, and the punishment for such an offense was severe. Under rulers like Darius I, historical records confirm that amputation was a common form of retribution. When someone was caught stealing, the punishment could include the amputation of their hand. Losing a hand in ancient Persia wasn't just a physical loss, it was a social and economic one. The amputation marked the offender as dishonorable and rendered them useless in a society that relied on physical labor and trust. The pain and humiliation of losing a hand were compounded by the social stigma attached to it. For the victim, it wasn't just the loss of a body part, it was the loss of their place in society, their identity, and their livelihood. This brutal punishment served not only as a form of retribution, but also as a stark warning to the rest of the empire. Theft was not tolerated, and the punishment for it was both immediate and visible. It reaffirmed the authority of the sovereign and the sanctity of the law in the Persian Empire. Rebels hung high to warn the masses, the spectacle of impalement. Rebellion against the Persian Empire was an unforgivable sin. To challenge the king was to challenge the divine order itself, and the punishment for rebellion was as brutal as it was public. One of the most terrifying methods of execution employed by the Persian rulers was Herodotus, the Greek historian, provides a harrowing account of how, after quelling a rebellion in Babylon, King Darius I ordered the execution of 3,000 rebel leaders. The punishment for these rebels was impalement, a gruesome spectacle meant to send a message to the masses. The impalement was not a quick death, it was prolonged, painful, and designed to be seen by everyone. The victim's body would be impaled on a stake, left to die in public view. This horrifying display ensured that the consequences of rebellion were clear to all. It wasn't just a death. It was a spectacle of suffering meant to instill fear in anyone who might dare to defy the king's authority. Persian law buried its enemies under a shower of stones. Stoning was another horrific form of execution used by the Persians. particularly for those who committed crimes that violated moral or social norms. Crimes such as adultery or sacrilege were met with stoning, a punishment designed to be both public and brutal. The condemned would be buried or immobilized, their bodies exposed to the crowd, and the punishment would begin. Members of the community or officials would throw stones at the condemned, each stone symbolizing the collective weight of the law and society's judgment. The act of stoning was not just a physical execution, it was a moral reckoning, a public judgment meant to purify society by casting out those who defied its most sacred laws. The collective nature of stoning made it especially terrifying, as it involved the entire community in the execution. It was a punishment meant to be witnessed, a brutal reminder of the consequences of defying the law. Enemies faced a wooden frame under Persian law. The spectacle of crucifixion, often associated with the Roman Empire, actually predates it by centuries and was used by the Persian Empire as a form of punishment for traitors and enemies of the state. This method of execution was not simply about death, it was about humiliation and control. The condemned would be tied or nailed to a wooden frame, elevated for all to see. The punishment was prolonged, leaving the condemned to suffer, just from the physical pain of the crucifixion, but also from the mental torment of being exposed to the elements, stripped of dignity, and left to die in public view. It was a method of punishment designed to break both the body and the spirit, ensuring that the traitor would never be remembered with honor or respect. Repeatedly flogged for offending royal authority, the scourge of the whip. In the Persian Empire, public flogging was a common form of punishment for those who disrespected or defied the king's authority. The whip was used as both a physical instrument of pain and a public symbol of the king's absolute control. Flogging was not just a punishment, it was a way of reinforcing the divine right of the king and ensuring that all subjects understood the consequences of disobedience. The scars left by the whip were permanent reminders of the king's power, and the act of flogging was often done in public, ensuring that the humiliation was seen by all. It was a visual demonstration of the king's authority and the consequences of challenging it. The Persian Empire's legacy of fear and punishment. The punishments employed by the Persian Empire were not just about enforcing the law, they were about creating a legacy of fear, a legacy that endured long after the empire's fall. These brutal methods were designed to instill terror in the hearts of anyone who dared to defy the king, ensuring that the empire's authority was never questioned. But as we look back on these horrific practices, we must ask, were these methods necessary to maintain control, or did they reveal the fragility of an empire built on fear? The Persian Empire may have been powerful, but its reliance on such extreme punishments shows that even the mightiest empires have their vulnerabilities. As Darius I once declared, "By the grace of Ahura Mazda, I am king. Ahura Mazda gave me this kingdom." Power, once claimed, was mercilessly protected.